lost all control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She caught me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. The claws in my heart, I can't let go, I'm breaking apart, controlling me, controlling me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal, Bedtime Stories from Beyond. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. You're kind of stuck with me for the next foreseeable future. I'm not sure how long this bedtime story is going to end up lasting because those of you who've been around watching them know, there doesn't seem to be any scheduled time. There's a time they start, and then whenever they're done, they're done. So thank you guys for all the support and encouragement to continually asking me to do longer ones. That feels really good. You know, I was concerned when I decided to do these bedtime stories. It's like, God, are they going to get bored and sick of it? But so many of you have been like, oh man, keep going. It's so great that they're longer hour episodes, which is really humbling. It's really cool. And thank you guys so much. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of evolving into a whole nother, hour episodes as it's going, but we'll see how it goes. I can't say for sure we're going to do it that way or not, but I really intended for these to be 10-minute episodes, just, quickies for people to catch and learn more about what the portal is. But we'll see where we end up. So that's all I can tell you. But I hope you guys are ready for tonight's episode because it is time for bed. Yes, Ken, last night's episode was about an hour. It was close anyway. It wasn't quite an hour, but it was close. So, very cool. Just got a text message. All right. So, but yeah, I'm okay going a little longer. That's fine. It's actually really hard for me to cut off the episodes after a quick couple of stories anyway. So, it's kind of good for me too, but I just don't want you guys to get sick of it ever. It's also making it necessary for me to do more planning than I had intended for these episodes, but that's all right. You guys are worth every moment I spend doing it because that's the love I have for you. So that's the way it works. But I see Deb's in the chat room, Diana, Pixie, Ken, Lena. Let's see, Pat. How you doing, Pat? Haxer's in there. Ken again. Dawn's to you too. Good to see you, Dawn's. Or Dawn. I don't know what you prefer, but let's see. Anybody else? Jess. Did I say Jess already? Well, if I didn't, you can never say Jess enough. Hi, Jess. Diana. I think that's all that's chatted so far. Oh, Claire's in here. Hi, Claire. Miss C. Cause is in here. Claire Cousins. That's awesome. Nice to see you. I'm glad you could make it. These are the new Bedtime Stories from Beyond. I don't know if you've seen them before, Claire, but Claire's been around since the portal's been around. Longtime TF4 supporter and listener, and a great, wonderful person. She's actually called into the show, and I love it when all you guys call in, but her accent is just so cool. I could just listen to her talk all day. She's got the greatest accent. So let's see. Yeah, that's everybody, I think. Let me go to the end of the list and see if anybody else has spoke up. Nope, looks like I've named everyone that I can see. So if you're in the chat room and I didn't say your name and you would like a shout out, please let me know. I don't have a list. YouTube doesn't give me a list of people that are here. And if they do, I don't know where the hell to find it. So it is what it is. But welcome to the show. Tonight we're going to talk about the shape of fear. And essentially, the paranormal, of course, is frightening. And we've covered this many times. A lot of times I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in many ways because you guys have heard me say a lot about these things already, but I think it's one of those points that you really have to drive home. But I think this is also relevant to every part of your life. I don't think this is just a viewpoint that's absolutely incumbent only on the paranormal. I think it's an important point. And I think, Chris and Cherie and Frank Castle and Paula Milo talk about this all the time. It's the being fearless. And I'm not saying you can't ever experience fear, but the point is when you experience fear, you are surrendering to whatever it is. You are surrendering to whether it's you're afraid of someone, then you're surrendering to them in an essence. If you're afraid of something like say you're afraid of heights, then you are surrendering to the fact that you don't trust yourself and you're surrendering your will and your willpower to that thing. If you're afraid of ghosts, it's a surrender to them. And so I think that it's really important as we grow and as we learn and as we progress in our lives and we evolve on this energetic level, it's important to master your fear. Because when you do, you are mastering your creation of this reality. You are mastering your view of this reality, your participation in this reality. And you are recognizing that you do have power. Even when it seems like you don't, you do have power. And there are many dark things in the paranormal that are rumored to feed off of fear and negativity. And for some reason or somehow they persist on those things. Now, whether that's a utilitarian thing and maybe it's beneficial, they eat up some of the fear so we don't have this preponderance of these negative emotions around. That could be. I know that's a viewpoint that Don discovered from some shaman guy. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was on Art Bell's show years ago. And that was an interesting concept, and that kind of makes it kind of cool if those things do come around and feed on fear and basically help to take that fear from you because it helps them persist. That negative charge, that super energy of fear, it's such an energetic response. They come and remove it, so maybe you can find a new calmness or you can find a center. I don't know what to think about that. I guess it's possible. I'll never say never, but it's one of those things I'd never heard before that episode that Don discovered. I think it's an incredible viewpoint. It would be nice if there was an altruistic reason to it, but sometimes it seems as if these entities create fear in order to feed, and maybe they're not getting enough energy through their, just wandering around and pulling negativity out of stuff. I can't imagine that's possible because I think the world right now is swarming in negativity, and it must be just a freaking buffet for these things if they do run around and feed on negative energy. But if they do need to inspire that fear and to have that surrender and then feed from that and feed from us, that's a pretty dark and ugly thing. So I think it's important to remember that we are divine sparks of light. We are these divine lights, and I realize that's a weird angle for a lot of people to envision, and it sounds really hippie-ish, but I don't know how else to say it. You were given life, you are alive because you received a spark of life from what I believe is like the divine consciousness, the universal consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Semantics don't matter. In my opinion, God doesn't care if we call him God or her God or it God. God doesn't care if we call it, any number of other names. It doesn't care. What matters is what's in your heart. What do you revere that divine energy with? Do you revere it with love and positiveness, or the other thing is one of my other pet peeves is God fearing, and I know that people use that as a statement of obedience, but I don't believe, I don't know if I should even say things like this, because I've never wanted to stomp on people's paradigms, whatever they are, and I never want to stomp on somebody's religion, whatever it is, because I believe that all religions are beautiful if you observe that religion and it gives you peace and love and hope. I think that's a wonderful thing. But I also see people using their religions in very negative ways. They use it to judge other people. They use it to dismiss entire factions of a population because they aren't the same, so they're not as good. And it's in those cases where I think religion becomes absolutely ugly. And this isn't a show about religion, so I apologize. But we're discussing fear, and any kind of fear. If you're afraid of this divine, loving being that created you out of nothingness, then that seems really weird. That seems really odd that you should revere that with a fearful heart. That, this source, this wellspring of our existence should be regarded with trepidation and hesitation and trembling and, due to the might and majesty of this being. It's like, that is, if we are indeed the children, then that is the parent. And who wants to grow up being afraid of your parent? So these are my viewpoints. And again, I apologize. I'm not trying to offend anybody. That's not what this is about. But it's just, fear is never a good thing. Now, that's not to say being wary is never a good thing. Being wary is smart. Being wary is a survival mechanism. Being wary keeps you safe. Being concerned can keep you, observant and watchful. And so I don't mean to confuse and conflate all of those into one label called fear, because there is very positive, not necessarily negative responses, but energetic responses. The negative would be fear. And if you become afraid, you are allowing something to diminish you. And I think that's where the weakness comes in, and that's when people go through these periods of horrible hauntings, because it's a war of attrition in a lot of cases. With a real aggressive haunting, it's a war of attrition. It is trying to wear you down. It is trying to break you. If they're really dark, negative haunts, which could be demonic, they could be some form of poltergeist or some form of shadow people, or any number of negative entities. They want to win. They want to conquer. They want to control. They want to subjugate you in some way. And by making you afraid, you lose control. Now, we don't really understand what these things are in the truest sense. We don't understand. We don't understand if they're 12 feet tall and horns and wings and just sheer ugliness and terror, or if they're these little negative charges that run around. I mean, we just don't know. We know people claim that they've seen them, or they've seen a representation of them, but is that in actuality what they look like, or is that just a projection of fear to cause fear? Is it just an energetic manifestation to cause you to be afraid? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I think it's good to regard it as just an illusion, and not to say that they aren't there and they aren't real, but what they're showing you doesn't always have to be truth. It doesn't have to be like, this is the reveal, here I am, now run and cower. It could be just like, I want this person very afraid, so I'm gonna pull from their mind the most fearsome image, and I'm gonna make myself look that way, because these are energetic beings, ladies and gentlemen. They are not chained to a physical form. They are an energetic form, and they can appear how they want to appear. And so they can be 8 feet taller. They could be the size of a pencil eraser and everything in between. And I honestly believe that, in most cases, when these things are unobserved, they probably are these little balls that are floating around, because it's an efficient form. Being a little orb floating around is a much more efficient form than having legs and arms and appendages and structure. That must be a much more energetic manifestation. So probably in their true natural form, they're just these little lights. And they look little, but, I don't pretend, to know how much energy they actually have. But the point is that, are you really afraid of a little ball of light? So it's one thing you can give yourself to maybe cope better if you're ever in a negative haunt situation. It's like, and there was, I think, I know I've seen it on Ghost Adventures, but I think I've seen it on several other, either investigations online, or I've seen it on other shows on the cable channels and stuff. But you hear these knocks and these like footsteps, and they'll have like a static camera, and they capture these little orbs of light. And in one case, one episode for sure was the Ghost Adventures. They were upstairs and heard a loud knock. Well, they had a static night vision camera and caught this little orb of light going like this and hitting a wall at the exact same moment that knock came, and then floated up towards the ceiling, So it sounded like this ominous knock, but it was just this little ball of light. And so it kind of keeps things in perspective to look at it that way. But anyway, the paranormal is a powerful thing, but you are also powerful. And I think we forget that. We forget how much energy and how much ability we have, because, we've been misled in many ways, and we've forgotten what our ancient ancestors probably knew very well. So just always try to stay in touch with your fear or conquer it, I guess is a better word. Oh, okay. All right. Don just messaged me. All right. I got to check something out. I got to remember to check something out, so just excuse me. I got to take a note. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I did hear back from Linda Godfrey, and it looks like she's going to be on January the 19th on the portal here again. So it'll be wonderful to have her back. Where the hell's my pen? Yay. All right, I'll have to just remember to look at that. I'm so organized. But yeah, Linda Godfrey will be here on the 19th. I just got an email response from her just minutes ago, so before going on the air. So that's really cool. All right, so anyway, let's get into some of these stories and see what you guys think. But I hope you don't mind, that I soapbox a little bit. But I don't know. These are just things that occur to me, and I think they're good thoughts. So I hope you guys agree. All right. It says, I'm 14 years old, and this story took place when I was about 10 years old. And it was on Christmas Eve. Well, that's coming up. Right before we went to bed, my little sister Madeline came into my room and asked me if she could sleep in there with me. Now, keep in mind, my sister was only 6 years old and afraid of Santa. That's cute. I told her she could, and I got up to tell my mom and her boyfriend good night and grabbed myself a glass of water. And I went back upstairs and fell right asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night and saw this little girl sitting on my bedside table on her knees, looking like she was praying. You might say that since it was the middle of the night, I was dreaming, but I wasn't, and I grabbed my cup of water and I splashed it on my face to make sure that I was awake, and I still saw the little girl. And I tried to wake up my little sister, but she is the hardest thing to wake up. So she didn't wake up, and I asked her who she was, and no answer. I went under my covers and went back to sleep. But before I went back to sleep, I heard her walk away. So I looked at her, and she turned around only for me to see her appearance, and then she was gone. Her appearance was a blonde, thin, long-haired girl with blue eyes, and she was wearing a green dress that went down to her knees, and green shoes with little bells on them. I woke up the next morning and told my mom and her boyfriend about it and what she looked like, and they told me that they didn't believe me. Man, what the hell's wrong with these parents? That is until the next week. My mom's boyfriend saw her walking through the house in the middle of the night. There you go. There you go. These doubting parents, I'm telling you, that is just so harsh to, just to push these observances away and, make kids feel just stupid. I mean, what are they going to do if they can't talk to the parents? If they can't talk to parents, who are these children going to talk to? How are they going to process these events? They're seeing something, and this person saw it and years later, and this was submitted in 2007, but so it was 4 years prior to that, so it was about 2003. So she's walking around for several years with this in her mind and, never was able to process it. Well, I guess that's a good thing for the internet. I just can't stress that enough. You got to listen to them. You got to listen to those kids. They need some help understanding. And if you don't know, help them talk to someone else. Help them talk to somebody that can talk to them and maybe give them some idea about what they're observing and help them understand. All right, the next one is, now tonight's stories are much shorter. So I have a feeling I'm going to try to be done and you guys are going to say, no, more. So more. And that's okay. I don't mind. One day, I was with my friends, and we decided to go to our best friend's house, his old house, because she moved out. Or her, I guess. And it was a very small house, 2 floors and an attic, or 2 floors, an attic and a living room connected to a bedroom and kitchen. The house had been known to be haunted because a lady had died upstairs in the attic in her wheelchair. How the hell is she in a wheelchair in the attic? The house was empty and all the lights were on and everything. We walked through the door and we were very frightened on what we thought was going to happen. I didn't believe in ghosts until after this. I was very young during this. We walked through the living room and then turned to go up into the attic where my friend's room was, where the old lady had died, and a girl was in front of me and one in the back of me too. I was in the middle, and as I put my foot on the first step, I heard a very strange voice. Not knowing if I actually heard it, I turned around and my friend looked back as well, because she heard it too. We went up the stairs, and there was a little box in the middle of the room. I told my friend to get it, and I tried to scare her, so I yelled loudly. We were all started going for the stairs and running. Then we all started going for the stairs and running. The lights were flashing off and on everywhere, and there weren't any lights upstairs. As we ran down the stairs, we all fell down at the same time. Bam! Right on our butts at the same moment. Screaming, we ran out of the house. The door was closed, but we left it open. We never went back, ever. Well, that's kind of your fault. I don't think you should have been there. Those darn kids, huh? Oh, here you go. This is a long one. This one might make up for it, ladies and gentlemen. This is strange, though. I'm not sure what to think of this one. Just I don't know. We'll see. I've never seen anything like this mentioned, and I hope someone can give me some insight. My ex-husband wound up being a really angry, hateful, mentally ill man towards the end of his life. Even after 5 years and several girlfriends, one of them serious, he never got over me leaving him. He always felt that I was his wife, his property to the end. And we would vacillate between trying to destroy me emotionally and trying to bring me back into his life. And he would forget all the resentment as soon as a real problem would occur. A problem with his computer, one of his animals, when he had his first heart attack or subsequent chest pains, and the heart attack that killed him, he was on the phone calling me. Completely forgetting the animosity, For the sake of the kids, I did the best that I could to get along and accept that he was unexplainable. He died on his living room floor with my older child in attendance. He left the hospital after going in for severe chest pains. He insisted to the nurse that he was fine and stubbornly signed himself out. Within 2 hours, he was dead at the age of 47. 2 days after he died, I went to his house alone to retrieve any paperwork and photos that belonged to me or us jointly that he kept, and I wound up spending almost 2 hours there bagging up his clothing and sorting through what had been our file cabinet, and as I was leaving, I was surprised to realize that I had never been bothered being alone in his house. Not by being alone at night, and not by the fact that he had died there. I had found myself feeling very comfortable and safe. I decided later that I somehow knew his anger had died with him, that I was welcome into his home, welcome to take what was rightfully mine or ours, and that he wanted me to take care of removing his personal items instead of his family members. I went back several times with the kids, with the kids and without, to retrieve any items that were theirs, and I had never had that same feeling again, but always wondered if he was there watching. A few weeks later, my current husband and I went to the house to get his lawnmower, and this made me feel very uncomfortable as my ex hated my current with passion. The feeling started long before we entered the house, but became very uncomfortable as my current husband looked at my ex's things. All very explainable with the conscious mind. I hadn't wanted my husband to even enter the house out of respect for my ex's feelings, but I didn't say anything so as I would have received a look that told me I was being ridiculous. So we have been inside a few minutes. The discomfort was becoming very strong. I wanted nothing more than to shoo my husband out of the door and make a hasty retreat, and I started feeling like things were falling on me as I picked up common household items, like the tuna and SpaghettiOs he kept there for the kids, and I must have looked pretty silly ducking from the imaginary things attacking me from the top of the cupboards and the refrigerator. And after a few minutes of that, and my discomfort growing to beyond uncomfortable, the fruit flies started. Not real fruit flies, but imaginary ones. If you think of what it's like in the summer to have a fruit fly or gnat buzzing around at the very edge of your peripheral vision, you'll know exactly what I was seeing. A black dot almost touching the side of your head, but you instinctively swing a hand at it. Now, instead of ducking from invisible things, I was swatting at them. Trust me, there are no fruit flies. At this point, I decided I had ignored the hint long enough, shoved my husband into the car, and headed home, vowing never to bring him there again. I went back to the house at least once after that, but never saw the fruit flies or had any feelings good or bad about it while I was there, other than the expected ones. More than a year later, the house still stood empty, waiting for the bank to foreclose on it, and life had taken on a new normal, and we were preparing for our second Christmas since his death, when I swatted at a fruit fly. Somehow, I just knew that the house had been sold, and he had moved in with us. Oh, no. I drove by the next day, and while the house hadn't been sold, there was a sale sign on it in front of the house and a full dumpster. The bank people had come in and removed the remaining items while getting it ready to be sold. I saw the fruit flies regularly for a few weeks, always on my right side, but they never bothered me. I even got up the courage to tell my husband, but not the kids, about it, and my theory. He's very open-minded and didn't seem terribly bothered by it either. We even joked about it once or twice, blaming my ex for taking things that we couldn't find. And I talked to a psychic I know, and she said that she felt that there was more than one, that he had brought family members with him, and that this sometimes happens at holidays. That kind of bothered me. It was one thing to have my ex hanging around, and another to have my mother-in-law visiting. One night, a month or so into the occasional sightings, I was in bed alone and the kids were asleep and my husband working the night shift when I felt someone sit on the end of the bed. While occasionally seeing fruit flies that weren't there was acceptable, feeling things was not. I told the air in general, I don't mind you hanging around here and keeping an eye on the kids. However, you are not to make yourself known. And that ended it. I didn't see another black dot until the next Christmas when I saw one once in the kitchen. The most common sight and his favorite room. It was only when I was cooking something he had always loved. I felt as though he was just saying hi and letting me know that he was there. I was reading ghost stories and on someone's site the other day, and I saw a dot again on my right side, and as usual, I couldn't help but feel like he was teasing me while I was frightened. So, very interesting. I don't know those dots, but it makes sense, I guess. That's just how she was perceiving his presence through whatever filters she's working with. But, yeah, I think it's a pretty cool story. All right, and one more. My dad used to work at the American Legion at night, cleaning the building. He was the only one working, so sometimes I would go with him. And one night, me and my friend Ashley went with him, and we were playing around in the blue room, and there was a bar and a lot of tables and things like that. And I was standing by the liquor room and just messing around, tapped on the door. Then all of a sudden, someone tapped back, and with a different pattern than I had tapped. I looked at my friend almost to say, "Did you hear that?" And she looked at me, and I could tell by the look on her face that she was very scared. We both ran out of the room, and just as we got out the door, something grabbed Ashley's leg. She screamed and pulled away, and we ran into the room across the hall. And when we looked back, there was nothing there. So we sat down, and she pulled up her pant leg, and her knee was all red and blotchy. We were so freaked out that we never went into that room again unless there was a lot of people with us. Another time, myself and my friend Ashley and her sister went to work with my dad, almost to see if anything else would happen. We were sitting in the bingo hall, and we heard this loud screeching sound. So we went down to the main hall to see if we could find out where that sound was coming from. And we looked into the blue room, and there was a chair dolly used to move stacked chairs on the dance floor. So we went over to it, and there were scratch marks on the floor behind it, like someone has pushed it. So I pushed it about a foot to see what it sounded like, and it sounded like the exact same sound we had heard. Later that night, me and my sister and Ashley were in the stairs of the building messing around with a copy machine when I heard something. It wasn't the ghost app. Huh. Weird. Let's see. Later that night, my sister Ashley were on the stairs of the building, messing around with a copy machine when my dad came down and said, "You guys are down here?" And then who was flushing the toilets? It turns out then, when we were down the stairs and my dad was upstairs, he had been hearing people running around in the bathrooms flushing the toilets. So I read up on the American Legion a little bit and found out that the American Legion had been used as a hospital for injured soldiers during World War II. And there were a lot of things that have happened to me and other people I know of, and I will have to post more stories about those. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? Was that a good episode? 35 minutes? That's not bad, right? I'm watching the chat now to see what happens. All right. Is that what it was? I heard you yawning? I don't know. I heard a like that noise as I was reading. It wasn't from my throat. Like earlier, I had a throat gurgle as I was reading, but that was just me. This last one, I don't know what that was. Cool. I'm glad you like them, Jess. Thank you. That was strange. There was a brief pause or something when Brent noticed it. Yeah. Did you hear that, Pixie? Did you hear that noise? Oh, thanks. Thanks, Oro. I appreciate that. Yeah, I heard it too. It was just right in my ear. And that's why I looked over at the Ghost app to see if it was from there. And I mean, the volume is low, so it made sense that it could be, but it was like that, or I don't know what the hell that was, but it was right in my ear. So it came through the system or from the microphone or the headphones. This is the only mic that's live right now in the studio. So Don's is muted. But the laptop feed is live with the Ghost app on it, but that didn't come from there because there's nothing on whenever it says a word, it also writes it out so I can see it and make sure I understood what it said, but it wasn't that. Very strange. Someone's saying hello. So, hello. Maybe that's what it was. Hello. Hello right back to you. So whomever it was, welcome to the portal. So what do you guys think? You good to go or one more? Let me know. I'm watching the chat. Oh, Mike. Oh, hey, Mike. How you doing? I've never met you before, have I? Mike Cool just came into the house. Good to meet you, Mike. Welcome to the Paranormal Portal. Bedtime Stories from Beyond. Encore. All right, I'll keep going. I'll maybe pull up one or two more. Okay, or just one more. All right, you guys said one more. All right, I was thinking of two, but okay, one it is. All right, let me close the ones I've read to get them out of the way. All right, let's see what we got. I think I read that one before. This one sounds interesting. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, this Friday night on the Portal, we're going to have our psychic roundtable here on the Portal. It's going to be great. I got to send those guys I got to send Deb and Sean and Joel and Diane rather, some outline of what the things that I hope we can cover and some ideas for a format. But yeah, that's going to be exciting. It's going to be an epic show on Friday. I'm really looking forward to that one. It'll be brilliant. All right, so this next one, how long is this? Oh, you guys, yeah, we're only doing one more. Oh my God, that's huge. That is literally like a 20-minute story. You guys want to stick around for 20 more minutes? Or two. Diana. One for the road or two. Well, this is a big one. This is more like 5 short ones. So sometime near the end of September of this year, which was 2006, I went to my friend's home in New Jersey, and my friend Mike's house has claimed to have been haunted from him and his family ever since I knew him. When I was younger, I suppose I was about 10 or 12 years old, or 10 or 12 years ago. Well, I don't know how old he is now, but I guess it's younger. My friend and I went into this dark and cluttered basement, and we were looking around at all the cool antiques and items, and we saw some clothes move around near the washer and dryer. So my friend Mike and I thought it was his brother and picked up a plastic bat to scare him with it or hit him with it, whatever. But we went, that was my throat. That was me. We went over there and the clothes stopped moving and nobody was there. We freaked out and ran back up the stairs to go back up. But a large painting, which was facing backwards towards us, blocked our way up the stairs. Together, we moved it away and ran scared as hell back upstairs. We told his mom, and she believed that it was a ghost or ghosts in the house. And after that, I never went in his basement or even really visited his house again. So as time went by, I later became good friends with Mike again and ended up back at his house a lot. Nothing weird happened until the events of September that had just passed. Mike and my close friend Val were sitting upstairs in Mike's room, just relaxing and talking. His room was very soothing because he had a very large fish tank and had a visualizer on his TV playing mellow music. Not sure if this has anything to do with it, but I was really relaxed and I was staring into the visualizer on the television, and Mike was talking about ghosts with us and actually brought up the time when we were younger and we saw something in the basement. He told me about the painting that blocked our way up the stairs, and I didn't remember it, and I supposed I was blocking that part out. Then a little while later, still upstairs in his bedroom, I started feeling weird. I felt like the room was getting darker, and I couldn't see myself correctly. I felt as if I was falling slightly backwards. The best I could describe it would be getting a shiver up my spine and feeling that moment right before you pass out, or when you're on medicine and sick and you feel very spacey. That's how I felt. So I quickly panicked and told Mike and Val that something was wrong. I told them I didn't feel right and I felt like I couldn't keep my mind focused. I was thinking that maybe I was dying for some weird reason and really didn't want to. My friends told me to just calm down and were looking at me weird, and I kept telling them I didn't feel right, and my friend said to come down because I was calm down because I was working myself up. And my heart began racing. He didn't want me to get a panic attack, and he then told me to close my eyes, and I did. Then I saw visions and felt emotions of things, and I got freaked out, but was also curious at what the hell was going on. I told my friend Mike, and he thought I was channeling. I told him, no, I wasn't. I couldn't be. He kept saying I was. Apparently, he was right. Hold on a sec. There. I was a little boy on a wooden dock with wooden walls around me. My feet were dangling on out the door, and there was a fence-like door that was open outward, and it had a little black book with a latch on it. It was dangerous to get the book because it could have fallen out, but I wanted it for some reason. Out the door was a lake, and it was very calm and nice out. The green stalks and trees seemed very clean to me. At this point, I started crying. I personally was not crying, but my body was. My fingers turned freezing cold, and then I came out of it, and then they warmed up. I later found out that every time this happens, my body cries as a signal to tell me, yes, this is true, or yes, this is happening. Everything important is relayed back to me through emotional responses, either happy or crying, even though the feeling I am receiving is not always a sad one. So then I picked up a piece of paper with my eyes closed. I drew a picture. I drew what I was seeing and the little boy, and I felt the time period was the early 1900s, and this boy had a schoolboy uniform on with a hat and a dark ribbon hanging on the side. I said my name was Josh or James and continued to draw on another piece of paper. I drew on 3 different papers and then just folded them up and placed them together to make one whole picture. It was uncanny how everything lined up. Some pieces of the drawing were hard to see, but others were very clear, and I began to get freaked out. As the pen moved on the paper, I felt as if there were magnetic forces pulling my hand at little increments to make the image on the paper, and at one point I put the pen on the side of my palm with my fingers straight out, and it started spinning in one spot very slowly. Again, I was freaked out. I wasn't able to understand the whole message that night. That's my minion. Sorry. Possibly because it was my first time. I'm not sure. The little boy also got very frustrated very easily when my friend Mike talked to him. A day passed, and we all thought about everything that happened now all day, and I went back to the house and again went back into Mike's room. This time another friend, Wes, was there, and we were hanging out and just watching a movie, and this time I started to feel something. And I was also trying to tap into whatever I was doing again, though. This time I felt like my right side of my face was drooping or had something wrong with it. I looked at my friend Val to the right of me and asked her if anything was wrong with my face. Then Val told me my eyes turned a different color, and I said, when I look at you, I didn't remember saying that. Val was questioning me about what I was saying. Then I started to feel that falling backwards feeling, and I started to cry. My fingers became freezing again, and I closed my eyes and could hear myself breathing. Everything after this felt more like a dream than truth. Luckily, my friends were there to remember it all, and I remember telling them to remember because I may not. I think this day I felt like whatever was embodying me had more control than the previous day. I said I felt cold and I saw water. It was nighttime, and I kept saying the water was like Titanic cold water. There was a lighthouse also, and Val asked me if it was her grandfather, and I cried, and I felt that it was. She began to cry a little as well. She said her grandfather saved 2 young girls in frigid waters, and he got a medal from the town for doing so. I don't know why that message was relayed as telling her that's who it was, but maybe that was the way she would know. So I kept hugging her, and I said that I loved her and missed her, and at this point I felt less myself and began talking to third person. I was saying that Kevin was okay. I was letting everyone know that I was personally okay, but my body was crying, and something else was talking through it. Everyone there believed everything that was happening as well. So after a little bit, my friend Mike, whose room it was, asked if I wanted to get some air, and I agreed, and we went downstairs, and Val was making sure I felt okay. Mike wanted to get a glass of water from the kitchen before we went out and asked if it was okay, and I agreed. I didn't want to be alone, so we all walked to the kitchen. The kitchen had a door which went into the basement. To get to the kitchen, we walked through the dining room and past the bathroom and his mother's room. His mother's room was originally his stepdad's father's room. Mike's step-grandfather was bedridden and died in that room. And I know he is one of the ghosts in the house. So when we walked past the dining room and bedroom, I felt enormous energies around me, and I jumped into the kitchen and told Mike, and we were there for a little bit and then walked out again. I felt the energies again and started to move my hands like an Italian would when they were pointing at something. I don't even know what that means. How do Italians point? I don't know. I'll have to look that up, I guess. Shaking both hands up and down, and I did that in the living room where a pile of clothes were, the dining room where some clothes were, and back in the kitchen where the garbage was. My friend Wes said, "What did they want you to clean up the house or something?" I laughed and felt happy. I believe that is what the energy wanted, as funny as it sounds. So then Mike cleans up and we start to go outside, but get stopped again. I fell on my knee, and Mike said I mumbled something but sounded weird. I was getting up and I said, "The spot," pointing down at the spot on the ground, and every time I mention the spot, I also get choked up and feel whatever it was is very powerful. I don't know what it is, though, so I kept talking about this spot, and then I heard something whisper, "Mike," from the bedroom area. I quickly turned right at Mike and said, "Did you hear that?" And he said, "Yeah," and I said, "It said your name." And he started to cry and get worked up because now we knew this was really happening. There's no way we both could have heard the same thing and me say exactly what it was if it didn't happen. Nobody else heard the voice, though, surprisingly. And I was scared, and I went over to Mike with my heart racing, and he was getting a little distraught, and called up his cousin and husband. And they were very interested in the paranormal activities and raced over. I guess that's why Mike called them. So then I kept pointing to the spot and feeling the magnetic forces around me, and I can't remember the whole scene after this, but I know Mike asked if I wanted to go into the mother's room where the grandfather died. I said okay. He opened the door, and me and my friend Wes began to go through the door, and as soon as we did, we both jumped back and felt something. I said there was a huge energy there, and it just freaked me out. We ended up going into the room, and my hand was moving around the dresser, searching or trying to tell us something. But I never got what it was. Then Val's grandfather came back in me, and I turned to her and hugged her, started to cry again. We then went out, and I went back into the spot talking about it. I didn't know what was so important about it, and I followed my hand into a grandfather clock that was near the spot and opened it, and a little piece of ripped paper fell out. It said something from Dad or something, and I'm not entirely sure if this was important or just coincidental. And then I went over to the old desk, which was right near the same area, and tried to get something that was under the lid of the top of it. I also never found anything there or figured out what was there. Then Mike asked if I would go into the basement, and I said, "No, man, I didn't want to go back there again." And he said, "What if the spot was something in the basement and it could start a fire or something?" He wanted to know because it was his house, and I agreed to go, not really wanting to go. I was very jumpy and my body was worn out at this point. We had the two girls jump on the spot upstairs so we could find out exactly where in the basement me and the other three guys went in the basement, and we all went all the way to the back with flashlights because the lights were so dim, it didn't matter if they were even on. Mike said the room which we were going to enter was the grandfather's tool room. I really didn't want to go in, but I did, and we entered the small closet-like room. I went in, and there was a lot of rusted tools on the wall. To the left and right were pitch black dark areas. I was a little scared, and normally I would have not gone in there, but I felt like it was okay. Then I felt like I couldn't breathe. I panicked and began to calm down and breathe very slowly. As I made noise breathing in and out, Mike said it sounded like I was dying. He said it may even have been the grandfather when he was on his deathbed breathing slowly. I pointed up at some wood and fishing poles attached to a wooden rack above us. I was pointing at a wire or something that was right under the spot I was talking about, and Mike asked what it was. Then I heard a voice creep up from the darkness behind me, and it said with a slight bit of attitude that it was a phone wire. It scared the hell out of me, and I didn't know this, but Mike said my eyes looked weird, and he said it looked like I was going to kill him, so he was frightened, and then I let out a scream and dashed past everyone back up the stairs, going back up, I guess is period. I looked back, and everyone was getting up off the ground. I went back to get them, and then we all ran upstairs. We went upstairs and went over what had happened. Man, this is a long story. And calmed down. And when we finally went outside on the porch and talked some more, Belle's grandfather came in me again for a little bit and then left again. I felt a warmth and saw my grandmother and grandfather who were deceased to the left of me. I didn't tell anyone until a day later, though. I didn't physically see them with my eyes, but I knew they were there, and I could feel them and see them in my mind, and that's the best I could describe it. Next, I went to A&P, which is a large 24-hour food store, because I knew it was very bright there, and that's where I wanted to be. I felt more myself in the light. In the darkness, I could feel things around me. So I stayed there for a few hours with my friend Val, and then finally went home with her, and she slept over because I was still really scared of everything. As I walked up my stairs past my parents' room, I felt my grandmother was in the room with my mother, and she was having a dream about her. The next day I told my mom the story, and she believed me because she had events happen in her life when she was younger herself. Then I told her I saw a grandmother, and she was set back and started to cry. It was her mother, and she was close to her, and I said I knew she dreamt about her last night because I could feel it, and I just knew it. She was a little freaked out, but believed me and told me that it was true. So yeah, very cool. Then he's, the usual closing lines, but very cool story. I guess he came into his own as sensitive. Very cool. But I hope you guys enjoyed that marathon story. That was just one story, but it was as long as all the other ones. And it's a 55-minute show right now, ladies and gentlemen, so I think I've done my part. What do you think? But I love you all. I hope you have a great night. It's, today? Tuesday, right? So tomorrow, Don and I will be back. Yes, Don and I will be back tomorrow night for our 2-hour show on Wednesday night right here at 7 p.m. Pacific time on our YouTube channel only. So I hope you guys will stop in and be a part of that as well. You guys take care. I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. And we'll be back tomorrow night for more of this fun and mayhem. That is the portal, and the beard will be here. So, guys, have a great night. Sweet dreams.